Hello, good morning, good afternoon, good evening, everyone. Welcome from wherever you are joining today. My name is Susan, and I am joined by the amazing Dexibit founder, Angie Judge. Welcome, Angie.
Hi, everyone. Thanks for having me, Susan.
Today, we are going to be talking all about how you can compare and contrast multiple data sets in Dexibit. But to begin with, I'm going to take you through a quick intro to Dexibit for anyone that might be new here. Then we'll dive into working with multiple data sets. So if you're new to Dexibit, we do data analytics specifically for visitor attractions. This is for both cultural and commercial organizations. And our mission at Dexibit is to democratize data, and we do that by bringing together all sorts of data from in and around the visitor's experience in your venue's operations. So things like footfall, ticketing, CRM, point of sale, e-commerce, social web, weather, and so much more. I am sharing my screen now to show you what that looks like in the product. So this is Dexibit. It is software as a service. You can invite as many users as you'd like, and you can build dashboards, reports, insights, and forecasts, which you can then turn into scheduled email reports at a click of a button. And in Dexibit, we have an extensive library of visualizations. To add one to your dashboard, you can simply search for the topic you are looking for and click Add to add it in. And this is an example dashboard, so you can see lots of different data coming together in these visualizations to get everything from very high-level data right down through to the very detailed data. And this week, we've just released a new functionality to enable our users to create visualizations from scratch and then save their visualization designs to the library. So I'll hand it over to you, Angie, now, and perhaps you can show us that too.
Cool. Thanks so much, Susan. I will also share my screen here. So we're going to look today at bringing together multiple data sources onto one visualization, but also, as Susan just mentioned, we have just released a new functionality to our user base and to be able to create your own visualizations from scratch and to save them to the library. So I figured we could cover both of these things at the same time, which will be fun. And I think one of the nice things about Dexibit is that you don't have to create your own visualizations from scratch. You can go in and quickly search and dial up any visualizations you like, and with the click of a button, throw these onto your dashboard, and which gives you a really point and click experience. It reduces that time to insight, not only for your organization coming into data analytics, but for individual users and building dashboards and things for the first time. But sometimes you just want that full control, and particularly if you're a data expert, it's quite nice to have the option to build from scratch. You can take any of our transactional visualizations and edit them to your desire. So for example, here I can click on edit item. I'm pulling up the data studio in the toolbox. And here I can get into this visualization and change what attribute I'm looking at, or how it's grouped by, or maybe what date range I'm interested in here, or what query I want to apply to this data set. Or I can come in and create something from scratch. So to create something from scratch, you click this ... menu at the top right here and go create dashboard item. You'll be presented with this modal, and you can choose whichever data set you're interested in here. I think I might use, for example, reviews. And then you can choose your visualization type. You can see there's lots of different examples, and actually hidden under things like categorical and time series, you've then got all of your different chart types on top of that. So things like line graphs and bar charts and column charts and things like that as well. I'm going to choose maybe, might go for a categorical visualization here. You can give your chart a title and also a description. The description will show on your visualization in the library. So for example, here, when people are searching, and the terms that you use in your title and your description will help with the search result as well. So for example, if I'm covering something like per cap, I might like to use the words per cap, and I might like to also use the words like average revenue per visit. So no matter what my user is searching for, they'll come up with those search terms. And those also display on the back of a visualization. So when you turn a visualization around, you'll get that description showing there. So this is a nice place to add in an explainer for your users. If you don't want to define those things at the point of creating your visualization, you can always come in and add them later on in the Style tab. So again, here, clicking on the Edit item, opening up the Studio in the toolbox in the Style tab here, and I can come down and add that description or change it up. And of course, I can change that title of the visualization at any time. When you create a visualization for the first time, you'll notice that it comes up blank. So the first thing we need to do is to define what's going to go into this visualization, because so far, all we've done is select what chart type it's going to be and what data set it is. So here we're going to choose, we'll go for an attribute. Let's choose the rating, and we'll choose a date range. We'll go for the date that the review was created. And then we need to choose, this is a categorical chart, so we'll need to choose how we want to group that data. So to keep things nice and easy, we'll go for date. And you can see that this data is quite variable. It's Google reviews that people have left, with a rating, maybe stars out of 5 or something like that. I think what we'll do is, rather than sum that all up, that doesn't really make sense, we're going to average it out. And I think we'll do that on a monthly basis, because Google reviews don't really make sense to look at on a daily basis, because you might only have 1 on one day and then 10 on another. So averaging them out across the month makes a lot more sense, because if I, for example, count those reviews, you can see I start to get at least a bunch of them on a monthly basis, some months more than others. This is probably some seasonal visitation here. So averaging them out on a monthly basis makes sense. And you can see during that high season, oh, isn't that interesting? I've got that dip in my average rating there. So this is where it can become interesting to then overlay a second data set, or even a third data set on top of this first one that we started off with. And again, you can do this if you are creating a visualization from scratch like I am here, or you can do this if you are working with one of our pre-built visualizations that are already in the visualization library, where you've added one of those to your dashboard and you just want to work with it further still. So to add another data set to this visualization, you'll see this cog button that's appeared at the top here next to my data set of Antarctica remarks. And I'm going to click on that, and it's opening up a new modal where it's defining that primary data set, those reviews, and I'm going to add on another data set, and I could continue to do this as well with a tertiary data set. And I'm going to choose, let's say, weather here, for example, and I'm going to go and choose a comparison type. And you'll see I've got 3 options here. I've got an overlay option, which is where I just want to display both data sets side by side. I've got a goals option, which is really useful for when I'm working with targets or even forecasts, where I want to show like a percent achieved. So I want a slightly different treatment of those data sets. And where I use that, just a quick tip for anybody who's doing that, my primary data set should be my actual, and my secondary data set should be my target or forecast. So it's a bit like a fraction. We're going 5 out of 10 kind of thing that will give us that percentage of goal achieved. And my third option here is ratio. So this is a good one to use in that example we looked at before of per caps or average revenue per visit, for example. So I might have my revenue as my primary data set and filter that down to my on-site revenue, maybe for ticketing, retail, food and beverage. And then my secondary data set would be my visitation. So maybe I would grab that out of my footfall counters or my ticketing again, and be looking for my recognized visitation. And then I would choose ratio, and that will divide one by the other. So we'll get that average revenue per visit. And again, treat it like like you would a fraction or a division equation here, in terms of which one goes first. But here we're going to stick with something really easy. We're just going to overlay and put the two data sets together, and we'll close that off. And you'll see here that now I've not only got this categorical visualization, I've got my reviews data that we defined before. And now I've got this weather data set to start with as well. And you'll see that again, my visualization is now blank because I'm defining this out. So again, we choose our measure. I'm going to go with temperature. And because I think in Celsius, we'll choose Celsius. Average temperature per day. I'm going to choose my date range. And again, I'm going to group that by date. And just as a quick tip, it's really, really important if you're grouping by date to make sure that your group bys are the same on both data sets. And you can flip between your data sets up the top here, reviews, weather, reviews, weather. And it's really important to make sure that they're both the same because you want to compare apples with apples. And to a degree, the system will do this automatically for you once it starts joining those up. So now we can see here, I've got my average temperature and my average rating side by side, as I wanted things to be. So that's how to create a new visualization from scratch and how to work with that new functionality to be able to bring multiple data sets together into one visualization. And for our last party trick, clicking on that dot, dot, dot on the top of the visualization, we can save to library. And then all of our users will be able to search for this visualization here in the library. One last tip on saving to library, before you do, just check that the title of the visualization is as you'd like, the description of the visualization is as you like, and things like the axes titles here are defined as you like, which you can define out in the style tab here, because all of those things will save with the visualization when it saves to the library, and then will be recreated when your users add that visualization to their dashboards. And so one of the things I'd suggest is just having a quick look through there. And the other last thing that you might like to check before you save to library is what date range you've chosen here. I would suggest leaving this blank when you're saving to library so that it will pick up the global date range of your dashboard. Unless you've got a reason for always choosing a relative or a fixed range date for this particular visualization. So for example, if I had just uploaded a fixed data set, I might always like to make sure that I've got a fixed date range chosen here on the visualization. If I had something like my visualization was around like forecast for the next 14 days, I might always want to make sure that I'm using a relative date of the next 14 days to match that visualization purpose. But otherwise, I think I would want to make sure that visualization date range is blank so that it will inherit that global date range of the dashboard when that user adds that visualization from their library. So that was a really, really quick run through of that new functionality. It's lots of fun to do all sorts of things. Just to give you an idea here of some of those other things that we referenced, here's an example a cake I baked earlier of creating that ratio between two attributes. So here I'm actually using the same data set twice. I've got my net amount, my revenue from my tickets, and then in a second take, I've got my issued quantity of tickets, and maybe I could even filter this down to a particular ticket product or ticket type or channel or combination of, and this is giving me my per caps, so my average revenue per ticket or average price paid per ticket, which is really fun. So this is a really nice example of using that comparison type of ratio here, which is giving us a very different interplay between these two data sets. And another example that I've got here is scatter plots. So I've chosen a different graph type when I created my visualization. So let's go back here. I had all of my different visualization types here. So my scatter plot there. And again, here I'm using the same data set twice. I'm using retail data, so point of sale data, and I'm looking at the basket size versus the order value here, which is really fun. So that's a really quick run through of that visualization functionality. And I hope that was enjoyable. Back to you, Susan.
Thanks, Angie. Really exciting to see how much more we can unlock with these new functionalities. We had a question come through. Can you group by something other than date when you're comparing data?
That's a really good question there. Yes, absolutely. So we looked at an example here of, let me just go back into one of these. So we looked at an example where our graph was a categorical chart. So under categorical chart, we could have, if we go into the style tab, any of those different visualization types, bar charts, line chart, etc. And the group by that I chose was actually to turn this into a time series. I chose to group by date, and I did that in both data sets. So for example, here when we've got reviews, that might make a lot of sense because I'm wanting to look at them in time. But yes, you can do the same thing here to group by something else other than your time. So you might want to group by, in this case, for example, and by channel. And I would want to do that in both data sets. So I want to do that here in this data set and here in this data set. I'll give it a try. I don't actually know what this data looks like to know if this will be an appropriate selection for it, but let's give it a go. Right, here we go. And I'm just going to change the chart type because the chart type no longer makes sense. Here we go. So now we've got our average revenue or average admission by ticket per ticket, but we've, rather than look at it by time, we've now got this by channel. So we can see here our box office is selling at $13.88 on average, and our online tickets are selling at $20.27 on average. So that's an example of using the group by for something other than time, so by a dimension of that data set. The only kind of thing I would be aware of when you're doing that is that if I'm, in this case, I'm using the same data set twice, so the same grouping applies to both data sets. That's not always the case when you're working with two really different data sets. That same grouping wouldn't be necessarily available across both. But great question.
Thank you so much for that. And thank you everyone who joined today. This is recorded, so this will be available on our website if you'd like to watch it on your own time. But we'll see you next month.
Thanks very much, Susan.
Bye.